The remarkable story of the so-called Celtic Tiger is well documented. From the late 90s, Ireland's economy took off in an unprecedented way. Between 1990 and 2005, employment grew from 1.1 to 1.9 million. And according to the OECD, Ireland has outperformed all other industrialised economies over the last decade. But what are the factors that fueled this extraordinary success?
My recollection of it was a sort of sense of a new opportunity, which was really catalysed by the joining of the European Union.
When the IDA was formed and the incentives to invest that were provided if companies would come, invest, create jobs, even if those jobs were for the products were for export. But again, the big link there was, we'll provide the education and the incentives. You come build your facilities and create jobs. The next step, I would think, would be the reduction of corporate income taxes. Ireland had two choices. Do you raise the tax rate on the industries that benefited from the export tax policy, or do you lower the general corporate tax rate? And I think they did exactly the right thing in retrospect, to lower the general corporate tax rate. And I think the third thing was, I guess, this big grand bargain between the unions and the government and the other agencies involved, which I think made a big difference.
We were moving very much towards thinking of economic and social policy in a conjoined way in Ireland. And that's something which has grown since and expanded hugely. So you have that social dimension, you have underpinning of the political dimension, and you have the economic dimension coming together. That's very unusual. I mean, it's done in the Scandinavian countries to some extent, but I mean, you go to the north of Ireland, you go to the UK, their policies are, there's the economic departments and there's the social departments, and the notion of jointly sitting down and debating them across the table, the way we do it here, is quite unusual.
So built on a strong education system, and then these policy steps, not all of which necessarily were synchronized, but in retrospect, all contributed, I think, to the strong economy that Ireland has today. And the final point that shouldn't be overlooked is demographics, because it's still a relatively young country by OECD standards, and that's a tremendous competitive advantage.
Imagination has always been central to the Irish mind, and that creative impulse was soon brought to bear on the world of finance. The International Financial Services Centre, or IFSC, was established by the Irish government in 1987 and attracted many of the world's leading financial companies to the banks of the River Liffey in Dublin.
A small country where the government knows that this is a very important sector can be quite responsive. So the legal system, the tax laws and so on are quite responsive to making sure that Ireland is competitive with Luxembourg, for example, to get this business in Europe.
Some of the top industries that the IDA had supported were electronics and pharmaceuticals. And they were industries which have boomed with globalisation, partly because they have a very high value of product to weight level. So, when you're on an island, you want something that you can fly in and out cheaply, so you don't want heavy goods. So it turned out that the industries we're in were industries which have grown hugely. Now, IDA knew they were going to grow well, but I think they've grown exceptionally well under globalisation.
One interesting fact about Ireland is those who are doing best are those who've spent periods of time overseas. You learn a lot by going overseas. So the history of Irish people being very willing to move overseas, at least for a few years, is very beneficial in the global economy, because you can take the ideas you learn from working overseas and bring them home.
I think a large part of it is as well, we're a small country, and we knew there was opportunity. We could smell that there was opportunity elsewhere. The stories came back of the money to be made in New York and Boston.
Again, there's a little bit of a paradox that we've always decried the high levels of emigration. which in many ways were indeed very costly. But the benefit is that this openness to working in different locations, this openness to learning from overseas, is really valuable in a world economy.
Martin Naughton was one of those emigrant sons who returned home to Ireland long before it was popular to do so. Naughton built upon the experience that he'd gained abroad and became one of the founding fathers of modern Irish business. His company, Glen Dimplex, grew from modest beginnings to become a world leader.
Yeah, no, most people thought we were fairly crazy. I mean, we started in Northern Ireland, but for somebody who had no track record and was starting with a dream and a vision, it's very difficult to get backing from banks and from anybody. But we did start. And it was a great atmosphere. We have been profitable from the first year in business, and we have grown at 20% per year since inception. Today, we are heading for a €2 billion sales, employing 10,000 people worldwide. And we've become the largest manufacturer of electric heaters in the world. We find that because Ireland has no enemies, we get on very well globally with the countries we are dealing with. I think there's a respect now for Ireland around the world. And there's a fondness for us. We create a smile. So the Irish brand, I think, is big and it's growing. And in countries like Japan, there's a big awareness of Ireland. In China, where we have 3 buying offices on a joint venture manufacturing company. So the Chinese are fascinated by the fact that this small island has transformed itself in that short period of time from being a country with high unemployment, high immigration, an agricultural economy, to have transformed themselves into being a knowledge-led economy with no immigration, no unemployment, and in fact immigration into it. And that fascinates the Chinese. But what really blows them away is the fact that Ireland is the largest exporter of software in the world. That just drives them. They can't get their heads around it, can't figure it. We have a reputation for being warm, for being friendly, for being positive people. And I think it's building those characteristics and building the best of what we have and projecting ourselves as such.
While many Irish emigrants returned home to a more economically vibrant Ireland, others chose to remain away and rise to the fore in their own field. The chairman and former CEO of the COCA-COLA company here in Atlanta, Georgia, is a remarkable example of this. Originally from County Down in Northern Ireland, Neville ISDELL is one of an increasing number of Irish who are leaving behind the stereotypical image of the Irish as underdogs and becoming world leaders.
For about 6 months, I worked in South Africa, and then I got offered a job with actually a Coca-Cola bottler, a franchisee, back in Zambia. So I moved there. The owner eventually, I owe him a real debt of gratitude. He said, I think there's a bigger world for you, there's a bigger career, and I've set up an interview for you with the Coca-Cola company. And I joined the Coca-Cola company. There was actually an Irish-American called Al Colleen. He was a great believer in people, and he would come around and sit on the end of your desk and talk to you, and believed in developing young people. And of course, I valued that, and I think that's very important. Something I try to do as well, that mentoring. Don Keogh, who former president of the Coca-Cola company. Another great mentor, someone who loved teaching, which again is a very Irish trait. It's the storytelling, it's the teaching. I've been very fortunate because I was in a real minority, 41, 42 years ago when I started out. And now you see the management of people and the ability to manage people, and also what young people will accept in terms of how they're related to and how they're managed is fundamentally different. You have to allow them to be themselves. You have to allow them to develop themselves. The regimentation of 40, 50, 60 years ago is gone. And to do that, emotional intelligence is a piece of it, and that's the link to sociability as well. Now, it's not about popularity, okay? That's not what it's all about. It's about being able to lead people in a way that they respect what you're asking them to do, and they will buy into the vision that you have about what you want to do with the business. Our business is very, very much a people business. Nearly all businesses are. And high-performing businesses have got engaged people who believe in the business they're in, and the mission, and the values, and the vision. All right? Those are communicated by the leadership from the top. You do that by being able to communicate, but also by being genuine and able to relate. As emotional intelligence becomes a bigger part, certainly in the business world even, of the equation, I think that there's a very specific advantage that you have because of the social genre, the way that you're brought up in an Irish community, in Irish society, that equips you extremely well for leadership in today's world.
I think, first of all, it's an advantage to be Irish. You don't have the historical baggage that others have in terms of their relationships with other people. I think that the social life of Ireland has created people who are happy in a social context and therefore are often welcomed in it. Some others are buttoned up. They are less forthcoming and less communicative and less prepared to open their soul in terms of discussion than an Irish person who often wears their soul on their sleeve. So I think that there are particular qualities that come from Ireland.
Based here in Washington, D.C., former Irish Taoiseach Prime Minister John Bruton is now the European Union's ambassador to the United States. Like many other Irish leaders, Bruton is bringing his natural talent for communication and leadership to a broader arena. Ambassador Bruton must skillfully highlight the values which Europe and the United States share, while also diplomatically address areas of potential disagreement. It's a balancing act which seems well suited to the Irish temperament.
Well, I think that what distinguishes Irish people from many other nationalities is, one, that we are all over the world. Two, that we are very curious about other people. Now, that curiosity is vital, I think, to keeping peace in the world. The person who knows their own way of doing things and is uncurious about other people's thinking is a very dangerous person. I think one of the contributions of Irish people, because we have this sort of, sometimes annoying curiosity about other people, asking questions we shouldn't ask at times, that gives us an ability to be peacemakers in the world.
Anytime that you say...
If we had succeeded in eliminating English as the primary language in Ireland, we wouldn't be as influential in the world today as we are, because I think the Irish have achieved this mastery of the English language. And we have connections all over the world. And we also have connections all over the world who have a strong sense of place back in Ireland, at least the place from which they originated, So I think these are this makes us quite an effective community. Here in the United States, it's obviously very important because a huge number of Americans either have Irish ancestry or are married to somebody who has Irish ancestry or have a best friend who has Irish ancestry. And all of those connections, are useful in opening up a door of communication.
There are 44 million people in the United States who say they're Irish and say it with pride. Now, it was a period where there was the stage Irishman, who was a hard-fighting, hard-drinking, charming but feckless guy. Now, the stage Irishman is dead, and he's buried.
You're good to go with the dollar funds and we're declared.
Yeah. Today's generation, the modern Irish, who are hitting the streets now, unlike my generation, they are better educated, they're more self-confident, they're better travelled, and they're used to being winners.
Many of these returning young emigrants brought back with them an international perspective, which built upon an education and an imagination cultivated in Ireland. One of them is Stephen Collins. In 1998 in Dublin, Collins co-founded a small technology company called Havoc. The company relocated to Silicon Valley and rapidly became one of the world's leading software provider to the video gaming and film industries. But now, like many successful Irish emigrants, Stephen has chosen to return home.
We're a nation of emerging technologists. You know, we're managing to dominate in areas that we shouldn't be dominating in because of our size. We're taking advantage clearly of various economic things that have happened. We're taking advantage of some clever moves on the tax side of things by previous governments, and that's great. That's created the opportunity. Now we're in a challenging but really important phase where we have to move away from this reliance on the multinational tax break culture of technology that we've had, and we need to move towards a more self-sustaining, bred from home technology and companies, and that's happening. You know, lots of small companies setting up that, you know, have spun out of these larger companies. Lots of commercial enterprises are setting up out of research that's happened in universities here in Ireland. And it's true. I think we're ahead of the world in that respect, in the way we fund research, the amount of research money that's available, you know, per head of capita today. Things were starting to look exciting, looking at 5-10 years in this whole area of online social networking, the technology that's going to connect people. That fascinates me. So I took the opportunity to move back to Trinity College and to try and establish some research that hopefully will contribute to the next, or maybe the next generation of technology. I think we're up with technology at the moment, and I think we're well placed to make a difference in this area. I think there are lots of media-related technology companies in Ireland, and there's been lots of support for that. And not only do you have the technologists, but you also have the artists and the creative people coming together in very interesting projects, and that's going to be very important as well. We can't lose sight of why we're doing this. We can't just be a software company. We have to be very cognizant of the impact of what we're doing on the general public and why we're doing it. And that's why I like the entertainment space, because you have a very tangible connection to the user. You're aware all the time when you're creating software that there's someone at the other end of this who's supposed to be enjoying themselves or communicating or expressing themselves. And that, you know, that informs you, I think, very definitely in how you plan your technology and how you plan your products. I very much know I'm Irish, and I'm aware that that affects who I am and others' perception of me. I think it has worked for me in business. It works for me in the US, for example. It gives you a certain edge of mystique when you're in the States particularly, and also in Japan and places like that, because you're not one of them, you're someone different, but also you're speaking English natively, and you're associated with this place that people have heard of and they have various preconceived notions about. But here you are presenting a very high technology product, for example, and that surprises them sometimes, because they do have this perception of Ireland being, you know, the green grass and the cows and the pint of Guinness. And here you are sort of dispelling those illusions to some extent, and you can trade on that to some extent. You know, people, I think it just gives you an opportunity to grab their attention a bit more so than you normally would have, and that helps enormously. And I'm very aware when I'm away from Ireland that I'm away from Ireland, and I don't believe I ever really want to live anywhere else other than in Ireland, or I want my kids to be brought up in Ireland. Because I think, you know, Ireland is one of the best places in the world to live today, and I've seen lots of other places.
I think Irish people are beginning to celebrate more, people's success. I think we as a nation have, come from where we were to where we are now, which, people should rightly take credit for.
Irish America now wants Ireland to be what it is, the most successful economy in the Western world, and we can trek, it's almost a straight line, Irish America's success in the business world with Ireland's success in the business world.
You look at what has happened with Irish entrepreneurs. You wouldn't have predicted that 40 years ago. Look at the success that they've had around the world. What is the common denominator? It's the ability to relate to, manage, enthuse, drive people, and have ideas, and be at the end of the day just an optimist.
But much of Ireland's continuing prosperity depends upon a fusion of the traditional sense of Irish creativity with the embrace of new technology and a spirit of innovation. In the next episode of The Irish Mind, we examine how the scientific mind came to the fore in contemporary Ireland.